So McKinsey have done a study recently, and they estimate the global market for wellness to be worth about 1.8 trillion. They think that it's growing at 5 to 10% per annum as well. If you look at Google Trends, social media, everything is leaning towards people searching on things like meditation, mindfulness, well-being. Clearly, content that's being shared around things like Instagram and TikTok is all around wellness. So well-being and wellness clearly are a big trend. Sustainability we know all about. So this afternoon we're going to have a talk about how this impacts branded residencies and potentially what are the strategies from a development and operational perspective to try and deliver on that objective around well-being. So, if we introduce the panel, Emlyn, why don't you tell us about yourself and give us your top trend at the moment that you think is a must-have in Wellbeing.
Thank you. I'm Emlyn Brown. I'm the SVP of Wellbeing for Accor Group. It's great to be here today. Top trend, I think longevity, which is a big word that's coming into wellness and well-being right now. So let's probably leave it at that. We'll talk more about that later. But longevity living and how you build that into residential is going to be a key thing for the next 10 years.
Ashley.
I'm Ashley Scott. I'm a landscape architect with WATG. Obviously, connecting with nature is the big trend, but the interesting trend in landscape is actually getting to edible landscapes. Eatable landscape is the new trend in landscape around branded resi.
Fully immersive then.
Yeah.
Nicolas, welcome.
Yes, hello, hi. I'm Nicolas. I'm the founder of Rive, Gauche, London. Trend-wise, we see also a bit of the new generations coming through. So tech's coming into the wellness, entertainment side, so immersive rooms where people can connect to it, whether it's for work, entertainment. Yep. So we see a bit more of that as well required, especially for that new generation of clients coming through.
Okay. And Ricardo.
Hi, I'm Ricardo Moreira, MD of XCO2. We're energy and sustainability experts based in London and Singapore. Big trend at the moment from a sustainability perspective is quantification. I think clear demonstration of benefits of sustainability is something that's more and more required these days, especially with the backlash that we've seen against greenwash. So it's really kind of demonstrating your credentials.
Okay. Well, thank you all. Welcome. Just thinking about, obviously, the benefits to the end user, but how could we leverage this well-being, wellness, sustainability in terms of sales strategies? Who'd like to have it? Emlyn, what do you think?
Well, I think the idea of a wellness living is not new. If you go back to people like Canyon Ranch in the States, been doing it for 25 or 30 years. There's demonstrable premiums that were done through that. I think the premiums in real estate sales between 15 to 25%, depending on the brand or what you do. So it's not really a new way of approaching it, but I think what you're getting now is, again, lots of new opportunity, new people coming to the market, and a far broader understanding at high net worth and at premium level how important lifestyle, movement, fitness, well-being is, right? And how much it needs to be a key driver within real estate. So for me, it's becoming much more of a standard rather than a standout, if that makes any sense.
Ashley?
Well, interestingly, landscape is all about wellness. It's about connecting people with nature. So what we sort of do tend to see is a lot of the landscape imagery being used in the marketing of the branded residential to attract people into that oasis of nature and connecting with nature. So that's how we sort of see the landscape, being marketed, and landscapes now are becoming more authentic. There was this period in time when it was all about bringing exotic trees and plants into these landscapes, and often when you bring exotics into a landscape and they're alien to that region, there's an over-demand in the amount of water that they use and the amount of care that they need. So going back to more authentic and indigenous tree species, plant species, is better for the environment, better for biodiversity, lower water demand, but actually is culturally connected to the location, the locale that you're in. It's a responsive landscape. And the point I mentioned earlier about edible landscapes, we're seeing much more of a connection with agriculture. people are urban dwellers now. When they come into nature, they want to see the apple tree, the lime tree, the pear tree, that sort of thing, the olive tree. You want to see where the olive oil comes from, So that's much stronger connection with the culture of the locale.
Okay, we'll maybe get onto a little bit later, but much more than just window dressing, of course, for sales. Nicolas, where do you see it adding value and helping leverage those sales?
Well, we work a lot with high net worth individuals on the private side. So when it comes to the luxury branded residence, I think sustainability is still a bit of a trendy word, which is often an afterthought on the project. So I think there may be a need to change the communication side of it, where sustainability almost feel a bit like a compromise on your comforts and as they used to experience it in the past. So I think there is opportunities sustainability wise to sort of, obviously you've got the energy efficiency of your buildings, you've got maybe a storytelling of how well we built to avoid disrupting too much where we build, how we deal with our waste, that's for sure. And then is also, how we involve the community, artisans coming and the works and do some really beautiful work on the interiors. So I think there might be, as opposed to be that afterthought, that, it'd be good to look at that maybe a little bit earlier, put in the process that we're discussing earlier. I think that definitely will be good.
And actually your experience dealing directly with the end user,
yeah.
I think quite often in some of these larger schemes that there is that sort of detachment initially in the planning phase. You're working directly with the occupier.
We do a lot of very large scales, private residence. And the nice things with branded residence, trying to bring that understanding back into the branded residence side. When you do a very large property, it's not always, their first requirements. Okay, but we need to maybe change the way we design things and the process we take them through to bring the benefits of it, as opposed to feel like it's a compromise or you're going to pay more because you want to bring sustainability in your project.
But you're certainly seeing from your direct involvement with the purchaser that this is something they want.
Yeah, it's starting to happen, especially because we're seeing a lot of new generations coming, much younger clients. We've got 25, 26 years old clients now. So there is obviously an influence. They're much more attached to sustainability, climate change. So this is starting to change, but I think we can also drive that change a little bit more to show them what's possible, because sometimes they don't always know. But yeah, for sure, I think there is demand on that.
Okay. And Ricardo, we've heard today that the very rich still care about money and where the money is being spent. I guess from your perspective, there's a real data argument there and tangible results that can be shown.
Absolutely. But before I say that, I think Jeff earlier was saying that now about a third of private branded resi is actually not super rich. So, we've got all sorts of demographics there. But I would say it's twofold. I think we have a role, we as an industry, in communicating the immediate benefits of sustainability and energy performance in an accessible way, right? And that typically involves benchmarking, but other tools as well. In the UK and Europe, we're seeing specialized platforms selling eco-homes. So there's an increased marketability there. But also, the second point I would make is future-proofing. I think addressing the future-proofing question is a crucial one. These are long-term investments, and that's what's unique about branded resi, is that your customer is actually making a commitment to this. And we want to know that that asset will be long-lasting, and the discussion about stranded assets and obsolescence is just starting in some parts of the world, and it will catch up here pretty quickly, I think.
Okay, maybe something we can get into a little bit more detail later. I know you've worked with Accor around their M&E strategy. Hearing about the different types of branded residence today, and I know the general consensus seems to be supporting hotel brands around it. It feels like hotels may have the edge in the sort of wellness area over some of these other sort of more fashion brands or automotive. Emlyn, how does it translate from the hotel into the residences?
Well, I think you're right. I think when it comes down to the experiences that we have within within wellbeing delivery. There's certainly a competitive advantage to creating and working with the branded side of it to create an experience that's appropriate for them. Number one, I think in certain branded residential that we do, we're seeing a combination of that with a hotel where we're sharing services to a certain degree. Again, competitive advantage because service charge is reduced but experience is high. Look at our old war office, for example, in the Raffles is a great example of that. We have a private spa on one side, shared beautiful pool at 25 metres in the cellar on the other side. So there's really an advantage in how we work and how we think about well-being as well. So I think in comparison to some of our automotive or fashion brand guys, we have a bit more advantage there. In terms of the deployment and maybe the future of how that's being done, I think the point that I tried to raise before was building services for well-being that, again, are lower on the labour side of things, because there's nothing worse than building 5 or 6 treatment rooms that can't get used and need to be repurposed. And so the current thing that's happening is quite exciting. It's things like wellness tech coming into the play. You've got things like photomodulation, infrared, cryotherapy, which for a higher net worth individual is being seen as a standard and a norm, right? And not only being built within a spa context or shared amenity, but actually being built in the home, right? So we're seeing people like Remedy Place in New York now doing customized rooms and fit-outs in residences in Cabo and in Mexico along the lines of longevity and different elements. I think that's quite an exciting place that we're starting to play in. So yeah, the advantage is I think there because I think we're delivering that within our hotels and we can translate that in a really efficient and effective way into our residential developments.
What about encouraging the residents to participate, to utilise these facilities, these services there? It kind of feels like that's probably easier to do in a hotel, maybe, with somebody staying shorter.
Well, I think you'd be surprised. I think if you're a sort of more premium, high net worth individual, they're living a well-being life, right? They want to live longer and better for longer, and the basic ways of doing that is through movement, nutrition, and mindfulness. And so they're using the gym, they're being active, whether it's their own gym, or whether it's in a shared amenity. I think one of the things we haven't really touched about, I mean, we're going through a massive wealth transfer right now, right? Where actually the people buying these high net worth apartments are 26, 27, because they've just inherited a lot of money. And they have a very, very different idea about what wellness and well-being is. They want to be social, they want to be in a gym with other people, they want to be trained and being active. They want to actually show themselves off and be in more communal types of spaces. So I think driving people down to use the word amenity, I don't like, by the way, shared services in a property is certainly easier. But you need to build them right. You need to future-proof them, make sure they're appropriate to that clientele, they're sophisticated. It creates areas of privacy and areas of group, and I think that the comment made before was the idea of bringing your own wellness into the building is really important, right? So through concierge service, they can actually book their Pilates instructor, a great nutritionist, a person doing feng shui practice or doing sound healing. That's really, I think, the best approach.
Okay, so that translation from hotel into branded resi. And Ricardo, in terms of measurements and what perhaps you see operating in the hotel space with businesses like Accor, what strategies around communicating that kind of measurement benefits do you think there are?
So I think that certainly the benchmarking of it, I think we've gone beyond our dependence on sustainability certification at this stage, and we're really trying to demonstrate through integrating energy efficiency mostly, but also other sustainability features into the design, and we're having some interesting conversations earlier, is key. And when we talk about kind of, is there a trade-off between sustainability and cost? There doesn't have to be one. And I think when we, a lot of operators, and that extends to branded resi, are really trying to push a more integrated thinking on energy efficiency into their developments. So there's a role for everybody within the design team and later on operation to incorporate sustainability thinking into their work, really.
Okay, and that trade-off between potentially upfront cost and cost saving, is that easy to communicate? Do you find is that well received at the developer point?
It depends on the case, and we need to be honest. There will be things that will cost money, right? But we need to try to first tackle the low-hanging fruit and look at efficiency. And efficiency is easy to achieve when you get involved early on during concept, and experts are using computer modeling tools to test solutions and guide the design. this is crucial, really. And then when you're looking at materials, you're looking at whole life carbon calculations and providing guidance in terms of material choices. All of those things are zero cost, right? And then on the scale, you go all the way up to the things that cost. And then it's about communication. It's about trying to understand how can we actually recoup that cost, either through the operation of the property, or through passing on that as a premium to the buyer. And I think there's a role in communication there that's really important. And I think developers have a huge role in really putting that forward and selling it.
Okay. And as we know, increasingly important in terms of securing finance.
Absolutely. So we are seeing a lot of green bonds and green funding happening out of Europe for all over the world. We're also seeing some investors which have their own requirements in terms of not only climate mitigation, meaning reducing your emissions, but also climate adaptation and risks to the assets, physical risks. So this is really being pushed on an investor side, and we now have Europe-wide, UK-wide standards on carbon reporting that will really provide a framework for green investment.
Okay. Thank you. So, I'm just thinking overall about the goal of well-being, and wellness, of course, isn't all about gym and spa. Ashley, the environment. I mean, you've mentioned already about exterior landscaping particularly, but just talk to us a little bit about the importance of that, how you've seen that develop over the last few years, and where you think that sort of demand is coming now.
I mean, the external landscape is a very important part of the setting for branded residences or for that matter, resorts, hotels. And that connectivity between being inside a building and outside of a building is quite important. And I've recently been working in Southeast Asia where it's warm all year round, and you go to some beautiful banyan tree resorts there, and the outside and the inside merge into one, and it really feels as if you're truly connected with nature. Whereas in seasonal areas, the Mediterranean, where it gets a bit cooler, the use of big glazed areas that allow people to look into the landscape whilst they're in the building has the psychologically effect of creating that tranquil sort of feeling. So yeah, making the in and the out work together seamlessly is an important characteristic in the landscape, yeah. Okay.
And how does, in terms of global branded residences and projects, I think urban is still a very strong contributor to that. So when you don't have the space of a resort and you're potentially looking vertical, how can you deliver that in that?
It's the use of green walls that I don't particularly love, but it's a way of bringing foliage and vegetation closer to buildings. There's obviously roof gardens. We're seeing more and more of that in urban areas, using the roofs of buildings as part of that outdoor strategy and part of being able to bring people into the landscape, into nature. Singapore is great, where they have, there's lots of buildings there where they've integrated landscape within the actual building itself, and you'll be on several levels, and there'll be a little pocket park as part of the building. I can go out and I can connect with other people if I want to in that small space, or I can just go there and read. But it's immediate to me in the urban area. So that clever use of bringing landscape into the buildings is a big trend at the moment.
And I think when we were talking before, you mentioned about that flexibility of space as well. And I think quite often we think about that internally. But I quite like what you were talking about in terms of the external.
We're finding how do we help operators try and monetize their external spaces, and it's more applicable to the resort really than necessarily the branded resi, but we tend to create sort of outdoor spaces that are flexible and adaptable. It may be that they want to hold a special outdoor a food and beverage event in one of the gardens, or somebody wants to get married in a particular space outside, rather than it just being the wedding. It used to be called the wedding lawn or the event space. Now people say, I want to get married in that part of the resort, whatever. So we try to help monitorize the sort of landscape, help the operators be able to sort of sell that landscape on. I think in the branded resi, we're seeing more outdoor gyms, fitness trails with outdoor fitness equipment, so you can go on a run, and there are fitness stations that you can, exercise outdoor rather than necessarily being in an air-conditioned sort of gym, so bringing a lot of those sort of tricks in to help people engage with the environment.
And connecting into that local community infrastructure as well, beyond the sort of the boundaries. Nicolas, with your experience with private individuals and your project management background, how can developers convey all of this as value to the purchaser when they're selling these?
Unbranded residence?
Yeah.
It's, you mentioned the shared wellness area earlier. From a really sort of high net worth individual where they go into branded residence, I feel sometimes, those clients that already have their own properties and their own wellness areas have an issue with privacy, yeah? So we sort of sometimes see those large branded residents where, you've got really, private clients don't really want to share a space with another 10 people. So as we were discussing, even maybe more in a urban branded residence development, when we lack a bit of space, and there is discussion initially with the developers, do you do a very small gym where you might be able to share facilities with the really, the top brands, gym areas on the sides, or you try to do something different. So we also having discussion now where we're trying to have slightly more individual wellness area with the plunge pool and the cryo chamber, and all of those things where people can book it, use it as a private space, and then they go up and then someone else will book it. Or on the very sort of tighter sites, we may be thinking, do we actually need the wellness on grant with the operation costs that maybe not everyone wants to pay, because it's very individual, not everyone using the same equipment, and it's very bespoke to whatever they normally use. So sometimes we will tend to then say, well, we've got an agreement with next door, brand new gym, they got everything that they want to, and they will use that. And then there's sort of, let's say, common areas might be turning more into private members club where they can do a bit of business and use that on a pied-à-terre in a urban setting and then go somewhere else later. So there is also that privacy element for really high-net-worth individual, which is always a bit sensitive because it's difficult on a branded resident place when it's a small space to cater for individual. They're used to that so much.
Emlyn,
It's also how you design the home.
Yeah,
As you bring in the wellness into the bathroom, bringing the sleep into the bedroom, optimizing the conditions within a high net worth apartment or condo to be able to do wellness there. It's not just if you're moving away from a shared service, there's always a place for that. But I think I would agree as well that going into the home, bespoking the home, the bathroom, circadian lighting, the use of steam shower, contrast bathing, infrared sauna, and then a workout space, right? Because yes, their trainer might come, they might want to go and do Tracy Anderson's class at Serene at the Berkeley. It's very individual, personalized. But I think that at that level, I would definitely agree. But I think the further you go down into that sort of luxury and then to premium, the common services become actually really important. I think in the premium sector and lifestyle sector, lifestyle is meeting people and well-being is socialization. So it's an interesting paradigm that this idea of privacy that goes down to commonality or common connection is really sort of also where you play when you talk about the different brands and what they are, what they stand for, right? But yeah, I definitely agree with that.
And for the younger generation, maybe they're also now, as you say, they're a bit more happy to share. Yeah. Yes, it's more social. I will say, the previous generation is more keen on their privacy. The youngest change as well. So I think there will be a shift as well. We're a bit in between, yes, because you've got two different client base, yes, that you try to please on a larger scale branded residence, so where you're going to put this. So it's important, the flexibility is important, for sure.
And to still have that space where people can interact. I mean,
Yeah.
I think you're right, that social interaction is important at whatever level, whatever scale, and I guess you know you're in a community of like-minded individuals, and that trade-off between how you use your privacy. Talking of trade-offs, I mean, we're here in Dubai. This part of the world's very hot.
Yeah.
How do we balance comfort and sustainability? Ricardo?
Well, I mean, luxury will always have to be respected in the sense of there will be an expectation in terms of thermal comfort and broader environmental comfort. So I think we need to work behind the scenes. What that means is really, as I mentioned before, working very early on from concept stage in terms of integrating passive design, local vernacular. You're talking about Dubai, that actually brings richness into the design, and it usually has cues from what works on a climate. But looking at the building fabric efficiency, orientation, and shading, and natural ventilation opportunities, glazing, down to materials that make sense and thermal mass and then efficient systems. So all of those things work behind the scenes, and it doesn't really need to impact thermal comfort and guest experience. And in fact, I think simplicity of controls is a much better guest experience or customer experience in this case, and yet tends to lend to more efficient buildings. So actually, sometimes it goes hand in hand, and the way we do it is very much using computer tools to assist us in making those decisions, right? So I don't see that as a trade-off, but an opportunity to perhaps use a different approach.
Okay, interesting. And I think, Nicolas, when we were talking, you were talking about using local craftsmen, local materials, trying to reduce that mileage of product as well.
And that's, again, that sort of positive side to the sustainability, yes. They want something which is very unique, that people hasn't seen, whether it's their residence, brand residence, or private residence. So there's a beautiful combination of bringing those really sort of craft people, artisans that have been doing that for years and years, and sort of design that to bring that into their home. So it enables this industry to work and thrive as well. Local people bringing the local techniques in, and that's also tied up to have your interiors would then straight away be more connected to the place, the location. So I think those things are very positive, and everyone's love, even on that level, that story about how's it been made, where's it coming from, why have we done this? So this is a very positive way to look at sustainability as well. And even the younger generation more sort of enjoy the fact that it participates to make the local community thrive much better.
And I think, just to interject here, I think the powerful designer really has the ability to take those lessons and adapt to current contemporary time. So, many years ago, would see perhaps Western designers saying, "Oh, we're in the Middle East. Let's put a wind tower up there because it's good environmentally." But we've moved beyond prestige maybe and more into how do we learn the lessons but really reinterpret them, right?
Yeah, that's true. And then sustainability. Maybe a couple of years ago, you'll just think you have to compromise on your fabric, or it's going to look like a really shitty materials because it's sustainable. It's good. So I think again we're trying. And there is a lot of work to do, but trying to understand, where that material is coming from, and giving also the choice to clients. Yeah, you can have that marble is coming from Italy. It's done many kilometers to come over. Or you can have that local stone. It's actually also very nice, but I think that has an impact, a little bit. So if they have the choice as you go through that design process, then also they will tend to do slightly better choice, I will say. And at the moment, it's not always automatic, quick, it needs to be beautiful. This is the materials we're normally using. So there is a bit of a process we're trying to follow to try to give them this option.
Okay, interesting. And just flipping back to wellness, Emlyn, what innovative products or ideas are you seeing out there? I think we talked about the Well in Miami and others.
Well, I think probably 2 or 3 areas. I think the touchless tech piece we're starting to really get into. That's things like photomodulation, infrared, the idea of helping to heal mitochondrial health through a variety of practices, which is hot and cold, contrabathing, use of light. We're the very beginnings of that, and that's going to become a real mainstay, I think, in both well-being but residential well-being. It's touchless and it doesn't require therapists, which goes back to the point made before. I think secondly, we need to be thinking more about sleep optimization, both in residential and in hotels. So we can design an apartment that optimizes someone's sleep. I think that the off-the-scale returns would be quite interesting for us to do. We design a bedroom to optimize sleep, and then we record that data. And the third piece is probably the impact of AI and of learning, of machine learning in our apartment setting or in our wellness setting, where it records what you do and it automatically orders the healthiest food for your fridge, and it understands what your HRV rate is, all done throughout the apartment, and that data is being given to you and to your doctor on a long-term basis. There's a reason why Nazarian's got into this with the Fountain View guys in Los Angeles. I think he's done a very smart thing that would many people also be emulating.
Okay, interesting. Thank you. We're getting almost to the end, actually. So, any questions? Yes.
How far into, let's say, the well-being and spa experience can you go? Because we're only starting to see the well-being centers that are a bit more on the clinic level. So other hotels, what expertise do hotels have in the clinics, and are we going to see more of these clinics that are kind of using the hotel part as their ability?
That to me. Okay. I think that it's an interesting time right now, because what you're seeing is this sort of melding from clinical well-being, let's call it Lanzerhof, Shah, those types of sort of more clinical diagnostic elements, and at the other end you've got classical spa, hands-on massage treatments. And somewhere is now coming this merging in the middle, right? Where you can use technology and use data. Diagnostics is getting easier. When I worked at Shah 15 years ago, the first DNA test came out as an 85-page report of black and white dots. No one knew how to interpret it. Now you can interpret it on your own phone and breathe into something and find out your own DNA reports, right? So technology is going a lot quicker, which means you can interpret the data. Now, there will be a blurring of medical use, and most will be equipment-driven, but I think hospitality will have a line where it needs to draw its line of its competency before it flips over to being a Lanzerhof or being a Shah. But I'm definitely going to see you adopting some of those practices, right? I think you want to get into the 7 and 14-day program stays. That's a very different market, a very different client, and a very different aspiration. So it goes back to the point about being true to your brand, right? And, I think hospitality can go into that field. There's interest there. But for me, and say with Accor, we're about the fundamentals of what we can deliver. And if we can't deliver it well, we don't do it, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course. So arguably, only, let's say, ultra-luxury segments could kind of tap into that.
They could do, yes, and certainly they will do. But I think well-being technology like photomodulation, cryotherapy will actually bleed into many different areas. When you're talking about diagnostics and programming that's supported by a doctor, you may see some ultra-luxury brands get into that space. Aman's moving into that space in certain ways, and I think other brands will too. But I think there's a word of caution, the caution being, do you have the doctor, the competency? Do you have the ability to support that clientele and advise them in a proper way? And I don't think all the brands will want to make that step to become, in my mind, a Lanzerhof, a Henri Chenot, whatever else, where you go there for a dedicated stay, right? There's definitely a place in the middle where we can get into that space and do more programming, but whether you're going to go all the way to that side, I would question.
Sorry, I want to just add something. What I see, Gary, my name is Gary, we supply spas with equipment. What we see more and more hotels, they have two parts. One part is the spa. For instance, Regis Doha, they have the Emlyn spa, and on the other side you have Nicolas. So you see this type of this, I think what you were asking, more and more projects where you have two types of businesses where one day they would emerge, but the hotel doesn't have any expertise about medical, as you said. So you have to partner with. We had yesterday a panel that it was about this discussion. So maybe we can discuss it separately.
There you go.
Anybody else? Very quick question for Emlyn. I think you've given us lots of what your trends for the futures are, but Ashley, quick trend for the future to watch out for?
What we are seeing in branded is I'm working on a Corinthia in Malta, and what we've actually done with the branded resi is put a courtyard in the middle of it, and that courtyard is glazed all the way around. So when I'm in the building, I see the landscape. If there's courtyard and I have a tree in there, landscape in there, I may have a water feature in there with the ambient noise that you know, it creates that sort of tranquil environment. So it really is about bringing nature, bringing people or nature closer to people.
So more nature. Nicolas?
Well, I like the data part of it, yeah? Because when you design something, you know, whether it's a residence or a properties, you start maybe, you know, 2 years before. You look at what's existing now, trying to predict the future in some ways. The fact that you could, as you live into a property, collect data, how well you're sleeping, you know, all of that, and maybe have the interiors that modulate from light level, you know, music, sounds, and see how that can impact your well-being. I think that will be great, and I think that definitely something with AI that could come into more to it, so where the buildings sort of, you know, collect how you feel, and will try to adapt that as you live through, and that should be, you know, because then you go back to the individual. Every person is different. You know, the light, you know, whether it's a warm light, you know, people react differently, and I think that could evolve quite nicely, even on the private residence, on the branded residence side, for sure.
Okay. And Ricardo?
I'm going to tag along and say data, but for another reason. I think we're going to start seeing a breakdown of these broad concepts like ESG or sustainability, and really wanting to understand performance in detail. And my dream is whenever you get a consultant presenting on RevPAR, ADR, occupancy, there's a line there that says energy use intensity, right? And that will be a comparable as well. I think eventually we'll move into that.
And service charge came up earlier, and I think clearly that will help in those conversations. So, future-proofing your building, a demand that clearly isn't going away. If these topics aren't on the first page of every branded residences project, then I think they should be there. They're not a gimmick. They're not a nice to have. I think they're an absolute must-have. But here are the experts, if you want to talk some more. But if you'd give a round of applause to our panel. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, before I forget, if everyone could go back to the summit stage, that's where now everything else is happening in that room. So that's the big room where it all started off this afternoon.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much.